The encounter. The battlefield was silent now except for the wind carrying the smoke of burning machines and broken weapons across the wasteland. Human soldier Daniel lay in the dirt breathing hard, his armor cracked and his body aching from the long fight. He had been separated from his squad when the alien attack broke their lines, and he had run until his strength gave out. The sky above was red with fire, the ground beneath him littered with the remains of the fallen, both human and alien. He thought this would be his end, a forgotten soldier on a nameless world, until a shadow fell over him. At first he believed it was another enemy come to finish him, but instead a tall armored figure knelt beside him. The armor gleamed silver and black, smooth and elegant, with strange markings that shimmered faintly as if alive. A helmet hid the face, the visor glowing faint blue, but when the figure spoke, the voice was soft and almost human. She told him to stay still, that the danger was not over yet, and then she stood and turned to meet the sound of approaching footsteps. From the haze of smoke came a group of alien soldiers, their weapons raised, but the armored figure moved faster than Daniel's eyes could follow. Her blades cut through the attackers with precision and grace, each movement as fluid as a dance until all that remained were broken bodies. The battlefield was quiet again. Daniel tried to rise, but his wounds held him down. She came back, knelt once more, and lifted him with surprising gentleness. For a moment he looked at the armor, sleek and beautiful, shaped almost like the body of a woman beneath it, and he felt a mix of relief and confusion. He asked who she was, but she did not answer directly. She only said that she was not his enemy, and that if he wished to live, he must follow her. With no strength to argue and no other choice, Daniel agreed. She carried him across the ruins to the cover of a broken wall, where she set him down and began to scan the area. Her movements were controlled and careful, every step silent, every glance sharp. She seemed more like a predator than a person, yet her voice when she spoke again was calm, even kind. They stayed there as the night fell, Daniel's mind filled with questions. Why would someone so skilled and so strange save a human soldier left behind? Why hide her face? Why never remove the helmet even to drink or breathe the cool air? She looked almost too perfect, as though the armor itself was her skin. He told her his name, Daniel, waiting for her to return it with her own, but she only gave a quiet laugh and said names were dangerous things in times like these. He wondered if she was human at all, or something else wearing a human shape. As the firelight from the distant ruins flickered across her armor, Daniel felt a strange unease. Her voice was beautiful, her figure strong and graceful, and yet he could not shake the sense that something was hidden beneath all that metal. Still, she had saved his life when she had no reason to, and for now he chose to trust her. She told him to rest, that she would watch the night, and though sleep was hard on a battlefield filled with ghosts, his body gave in to exhaustion. The last thing he saw before his eyes closed was her silhouette against the burning sky, tall and still like a guardian of secrets. He felt safe for the first time since the battle began. But somewhere deep inside him he knew this was only the beginning of a truth that would change everything. The bond grows. When Daniel awoke the next morning, the first thing he saw was the armored figure still standing guard over him. She had not moved through the night, her stance unbroken, and for a moment he wondered if she ever needed rest. The light of dawn glimmered on her silver armor, and he felt again that strange mixture of safety and unease. She turned her head slightly when she noticed him stir, the glowing visor focusing on him, and in that soft voice she told him it was time to move. He wanted to ask more questions, but her tone left little room for argument, so he rose slowly despite the ache in his body and followed her steps. They walked across broken streets and shattered buildings, relics of what had once been a thriving alien city, now reduced to ruins. Everywhere Daniel looked, he saw burned-out vehicles, collapsed towers, and the bones of war. He noticed how she moved through the devastation with precision, never stepping on loose stone, never making unnecessary sound. It was as if she had walked these paths 100 times before. She guided him away from open areas, leading them through alleys and beneath the cover of collapsed bridges. She seemed to know exactly where danger would come from, and Daniel began to rely on her instincts more than his own. As they traveled, he tried to speak with her, sharing fragments of his life before the war. He told her of Earth, of the oceans and forests, of music and food, of the things worth fighting for. She listened quietly, and though she offered little about herself, sometimes he caught a faint laugh or a small comment that revealed more than her silence ever could. She knew human tactics, human culture, even some of the old stories soldiers used to tell around campfires. He asked how she knew these things, but she only said that she had learned much in her time, and then changed the subject. Despite her secrecy, Daniel felt a bond growing between them. She would slow her pace when his wounds slowed him. She would find food and water hidden among the ruins, and at night she would always keep watch while he slept. Her armor never came off, not even for a moment. When he asked if she would ever remove her helmet, she turned her head away and said that some truths were too heavy to show. Daniel did not press further, though curiosity gnawed at him. He wanted to see the face beneath, to know who she really was, but a part of him feared the answer. One evening, as the sun sank behind the ruined skyline, they found shelter inside the hollow of a broken transport ship. The metal walls echoed faintly with every sound, and Daniel sat with her in the dim glow of a small fire he managed to build. He asked again for her name, not as a demand, but as a plea. After a long silence, she finally said he could call her Saris. The word felt strange on his tongue, but he repeated it and saw the faintest nod of her helmet. For the first time, he felt like she was letting him glimpse a part of herself, even if it was only a sliver. Through the days that followed, Daniel noticed little things that unsettled him. Her hands, though covered by armored gloves, sometimes moved with an odd stiffness, as if they were not entirely human. Her voice, though beautiful, carried an echo that seemed almost artificial. Once, when the firelight caught her visor at the right angle, he thought he saw more than just a human silhouette behind the glass, something shifting and strange, but when he blinked it was gone. Each time he noticed these details, she would move or speak to distract him, as if she knew he was beginning to see through the mask. Still, despite these moments, Daniel found himself laughing with her, trusting her, and depending on her in ways he had not expected. She was more than just a mysterious guardian now. She was a companion and perhaps even something more, though he dared not name it. As they sat together in the ruins watching the stars through a shattered ceiling, he felt a sense of connection that went beyond war and survival. He wondered if she felt it too, hidden beneath that armor, or if he was only imagining it. What he did not know was that her silence hid not only her identity, but also the weight of a truth that would one day shatter the fragile bond they had built. For now, though, they walked together through the ruins of a dying world. Two souls bound by survival, one human and one something else, and the night sky bore witness to a bond that neither fully understood but both desperately needed. Cracks in the armor. The days that followed tested them both as the ruins grew more dangerous. Patrols of alien soldiers swept the city remains, searching for survivors, while automated drones floated overhead, scanning the rubble for signs of life. Daniel and Saris moved carefully through the shadows, guided by her uncanny sense of when to stop and when to move. More than once she pulled him back just before a drone passed overhead or signaled him to remain silent until an enemy patrol faded into the distance. He began to trust her instincts completely, yet with every step he wondered who or what she truly was. One evening, as they searched for supplies, a sudden explosion shook the street around them. The ground split open and alien raiders poured from hidden tunnels armed with plasma blades and rifles. Daniel raised his weapon, but his wounds and exhaustion made him slow. Before he could fire, Saris leapt forward, her blades flashing. She moved with such speed that Daniel could barely follow her figure, weaving between enemies, striking with brutal precision. Yet in the heat of combat, one of the raiders struck her hard across the chest with a heavy plasma strike. The armor cracked and sparks flew across the battlefield. For the briefest moment, Daniel saw beneath the broken plates. It was not pale human skin he glimpsed, but flesh alive with strange patterns glowing faintly like shifting stars. The sight froze him in place as his mind tried to understand what his eyes had seen. It was beautiful in its own way, yet frightening beyond words, something both alive and alien. Before he could fully grasp it, Saris slammed her gauntlet against the damaged plate, sealing it closed with a hiss of energy. She fought on without pause, cutting down the last of the raiders until silence returned. After the fight, Daniel stared at her chest where the armor had cracked, though it now looked sealed again. His heart pounded as he recalled that flicker of strange flesh glowing like something out of a dream. He wanted to ask her what it meant, but the way she stood silent and still told him she already knew what he had seen. She turned away, her voice low and distant, telling him to gather supplies quickly, and that they could not stay long. He obeyed, but the image burned into his thoughts, refusing to fade. That night, when they rested in the remains of an old tower, Daniel could not sleep. He watched her as she sat apart from him, her visor reflecting the starlight. She seemed lost in thought, almost sorrowful, though her armor revealed no expression. Finally, he spoke quietly, asking her what she really was. She did not answer, only tightening her fists as if struggling with herself. After a long silence, she said that not everything needed to be known, and that sometimes truth only brought pain. Her words left him more uneasy than before, because now he was certain she was hiding something deeper than a name or a face. As the firelight flickered against her armor, Daniel felt torn. She had saved his life again and again, risking herself without hesitation. Yet that glimpse beneath her shell had revealed a secret so strange it shook him to his core. Part of him wanted to demand answers, to rip the armor away and see what lay beneath, but another part feared what he might find. Instead, he chose silence, though his eyes kept drifting to the sealed crack as though expecting it to open again. Saris did not sleep that night either. She kept her back to him, watching the city ruins, but her thoughts were far away. In the depths of her being, she knew the armor was failing piece by piece, and soon she would no longer be able to hide the truth. She wondered if he would still follow her when he learned what she was, or if he would turn away in fear and disgust. The thought filled her with dread, yet she could not stop the slow unraveling of her disguise. By dawn, they were on the move again, but the air between them had changed. Daniel no longer looked at her only as a savior or a companion. He looked at her as a mystery he was both afraid of and drawn toward. The bond they shared was real, yet cracks had formed not only in her armor, but also in the fragile trust between them. Neither spoke of it aloud, but both knew the silence could not last forever. The truth revealed. The days of walking through the shattered city were growing shorter as alien forces closed in from every direction. Daniel felt the net tightening around them, and though Saris never showed fear, he could sense the urgency in the way she moved. She no longer lingered when searching for supplies, and her eyes swept every horizon as if she expected death to appear at any moment. The silence between them had grown heavier since the night of the crack in her armor, and though Daniel longed to speak of it, he held his tongue, waiting for her to decide when the truth would come. The truth arrived not with quiet words, but with violence. At dusk, the ground shook as something massive approached through the ruins. Walls crumbled and broken towers trembled until from the haze emerged a war machine unlike any Daniel had seen. It towered above them on metal legs armed with cannons that glowed with terrible power. Its roar echoed across the wasteland as it locked onto their position. Daniel raised his rifle, though he knew it would do nothing against such a monster. Beside him, Saris drew her blades, but she did not attack immediately. She looked at him for a long moment as though searching his face for strength, and then she moved. The battle that followed tore apart the ruins around them. The machine fired blasts that split the ground while Saris leapt higher than seemed possible. Her blades striking at the armor of the machine. She moved with speed beyond anything human. But the war machine was built for destruction, and every strike against it cracked more of her own armor. Daniel shouted for her to retreat, but she ignored him. She struck again and again until at last a cannon blast hit her square in the chest. The plates shattered, exploding outward, and she fell to the ground, her body exposed for the first time. Daniel froze as he saw her true form revealed beneath the broken armor. What had been the figure of a beautiful woman was now something both terrifying and magnificent. Her body was made of living flesh and shifting alien patterns that glowed like constellations. Her skin was not skin, but a surface that shimmered with colors that moved like liquid light. Her eyes burned with sorrow and fire all at once, and her voice when she cried out was layered with echoes not of one person, but of many. She rose again, unarmored now, yet stronger than before, her hands glowing with raw energy that lashed out against the war machine. Daniel watched in stunned silence, unable to look away. The woman who had walked beside him was no ordinary soldier, but something crafted beyond human design. Each strike she delivered tore pieces from the machine, and the ground shook beneath her power. The cannons fired again, but the energy curved around her form as if her very presence bent the laws of battle. She fought with fury until at last she plunged her glowing hands into the core of the war machine, ripping it apart in a blast that lit the sky. The wreck collapsed into flames, and silence returned. When the echoes faded, Sarah stood swaying with exhaustion, her true form shimmering in the firelight. She turned slowly to Daniel, her expression unreadable, though her eyes were filled with fear. She expected him to recoil, to call her monster, to turn his weapon on her. For a long moment he could only stare, his heart racing with confusion and awe. He remembered every laugh they had shared, every moment of trust, and every life she had saved. Though what he saw now was alien beyond belief, he could not deny the humanity in her eyes. Cirrus lowered her gaze and spoke, her voice trembling. She told him this was who she truly was and that she had never wished for him to see it. She said the armor was her disguise and her prison, and now it was broken beyond repair. She confessed that she was not human at all, but something created to look human, to fight like one, and to deceive if needed. She braced herself for his rejection, but Daniel did not move. Instead, he stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. He said nothing, but the choice in his silence was clear. He would not turn away. The night closed around them as the flames of the war machine burned high, and the truth once hidden was now fully in the open. The bond they had built could never return to what it had been, yet in its place stood something deeper, forged in fire and revelation. For Daniel, the question was no longer who she was, but whether he could walk beside her now that the mask was gone. For Saris, the question was whether she dared to hope that a human could see her true form and still stay at her side. Conflicted loyalties. The fire from the ruined war machine burned through the night, throwing shadows across the broken city. Daniel sat with his rifle across his knees, staring at the alien woman before him. Saris no longer wore her armor, and without it there was no hiding what she truly was. Her form glimmered with flowing patterns of light that shifted across her skin as if alive. Her face held traces of humanity, but also something beyond, something crafted with purpose. She sat across from him, her eyes fixed on the fire, and for a long time neither of them spoke. At last Daniel broke the silence. He asked her who had made her and why she had hidden behind armor all this time. Saris closed her eyes as though the words she carried had waited too long to be spoken. She told him she was created by the Galactic Council not as a person but as a weapon. They had taken human DNA captured during earlier conflicts and fused it with the biology of another species, known for their resilience. The result was her, a hybrid born to walk among humans and learn their secrets. She was meant to mimic beauty, to win trust, and when the time came to destroy from within, her voice trembled when she admitted that was her beginning, but not her choice. She said that over time she had grown beyond her programming. The armor had been her mask, not only to fool enemies but also to hide from the council that controlled her. She had fled when she realized she no longer wished to be their weapon. For years she had wandered the edges of war, never belonging to either side, hunted by both. Saving Daniel had not been a mission. It had been her own decision made in defiance of the purpose she had been given. Daniel listened in silence, torn between anger and sorrow. She was built to infiltrate his people, yet she had fought beside him without hesitation. Every moment they had shared replayed in his mind. Every laugh, every act of kindness, every time she placed herself in danger for him. Could all of that be lies, or had she truly changed from what she was designed to be? He wanted to believe the latter. Yet doubt pressed against his heart. He asked her why she had not told him sooner, why she had let him believe she was human. Her answer was quiet but heavy. She said she had feared the look in his eyes when he learned the truth, and now she had seen it. Daniel looked at her then and realized she was not afraid of battle or death. She was afraid of rejection, of being abandoned. In that moment she seemed more human than ever, filled with weakness and hope. He set down his rifle and told her that she was free to choose who she wanted to be now. The council might have created her, but they could not command her heart. She listened with wide eyes as though his words were something she had never allowed herself to imagine. The silence between them after that was different. It was not the silence of secrets, but the silence of decisions yet to come. Daniel knew that if the council learned she was alive, they would stop at nothing to hunt her down. To them she was property, a stolen weapon, an experiment that had escaped. To humanity she would be seen as a threat, a monster born of alien science. There was no side that would welcome her. Yet Daniel felt his resolve hardening. If the galaxy saw her as enemy, then he would be the one to stand as her ally. Saris watched him through the firelight, her patterns glowing like starlight across her skin. She asked him if he truly believed what he said, if he could walk beside something that was never meant to exist. Daniel answered without hesitation. He told her that humanity had always defied the limits set against it, that they had risen from weakness to strength because they never turned away from impossible odds. He said she was proof that choice mattered more than creation. Tears glimmered in her strange, luminous eyes, though her face remained proud. She whispered that perhaps he was right, that perhaps together they could forge something new. Yet even as the bond between them deepened, shadows moved beyond the fire. The council had already begun to close in. Their hunters were not far, and soon both Daniel and Saris would face the test of whether trust could survive the fury of an entire galaxy. The final battle. The ruins had grown colder as night pressed against the shattered city. Daniel and Saris moved quietly through broken towers, their footsteps echoing faintly in the silence. The fire from the destroyed war machine had long burned out, but the glow of its wreck still lit the horizon like a scar across the land. Daniel felt the weight of every step heavy with the knowledge that the council would not let them vanish so easily. Saris walked beside him, her strange patterns glowing softly against the darkness like a living lantern. Neither spoke, though both knew what was coming. It began with the low hum of engines above. Daniel looked to the sky and saw dark shapes descending. Dozens of armored hunters dropped from transports, their weapons gleaming under the pale light. They spread across the ruins with military precision, cutting off every path of escape. Saris raised her head, her eyes burning bright as though she had expected this moment all along. Daniel gripped his rifle, knowing it would not be enough, yet refusing to abandon her side. The hunters closed in, their leader stepping forward, clad in heavy armor, marked with the crest of the council. His voice carried through a helmet amplifier, cold and merciless. He ordered Saris to surrender herself, stating she was property of the council, a weapon that must be reclaimed. He promised swift death for the human if she resisted. Daniel aimed his weapon without lowering his gaze and answered that she was no one's property. The leader gave a signal and the hunters advanced. The battle erupted with sudden fury. Plasma fire lit the night as Daniel fired back, taking cover behind the remains of a broken wall. Saris charged forward, unleashing her full power, now unhidden. Energy coursed from her hands, striking hunters down in bursts of light. She moved faster than Daniel had ever seen her move before, weaving through the enemy like a storm. Blades of pure energy extended from her arms, cutting through armor and metal alike. Yet with every strike the hunters pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming. Daniel fought desperately, covering her as best he could. He fired until his rifle overheated, then drew his sidearm and kept shooting. Explosions shook the ground and dust filled his lungs, but he refused to fall back. He saw Saris standing against 10 hunters at once, her body glowing like a star, every movement burning with rage and sorrow. For a moment it seemed she might win. Yet Daniel saw the toll it took on her. Each blast of power left her trembling. Each strike of her blades drained more strength. The leader of the hunters confronted her directly, his weapon a spear of light that cut through stone. They clashed in a storm of sparks, the ground breaking beneath their feet. Saris fought with everything she had, but the leader's strikes forced her back step by step. Daniel knew she could not hold forever. Without thinking, he ran forward, firing at the leader, though his bullets shattered harmlessly against the armor. The distraction was enough for Saris to strike, plunging her glowing hands into the ground. A surge of energy erupted, tearing through the hunters and throwing the leader back. The ruins collapsed around them under the force of her unleashed power. Hunters were scattered, broken, or consumed by the blast. The leader rose slowly, his armor cracked but still functional. He prepared to strike again, but Saris stumbled, falling to her knees. Her body flickered with unstable light, her strength nearly spent. Daniel rushed to her side, lifting her even as the leader advanced once more. He shouted at her to stay with him, his voice raw with desperation. Saris looked at him, her eyes filled with pain, yet also with peace. She told him this was the moment she had feared, not the battle itself, but the truth of what she was. She said she was not meant to live free, that she was born to be a weapon and nothing more. Daniel held her tighter, his voice fierce, as he told her she was more human than any of the monsters who would chain her. The leader charged, his weapon raised high, but Daniel stood in front of her, refusing to move. The final clash shook the ruins as fire and light consumed the night. Whether they would survive or fall together, neither Daniel nor Saris could yet know. All that mattered in that moment was that they faced the fury of the galaxy side by side, unbroken and unafraid. The choice. The ruins shook as the final clash lit the night sky. Daniel braced himself against the force of the blow, holding Saris close as the hunter leader's weapon came crashing down. At the last instant, Saris surged with one final burst of strength, raising her hands and releasing a wave of raw energy that collided with the attack. The blast hurled the leader backward, sending him crashing through the rubble in a storm of stone and fire. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Daniel's ragged breathing and the faint hum of Saris's glowing body. Daniel looked down at her and saw the toll of the battle. Her patterns flickered weakly across her skin, dimming as if a star were fading. She struggled to breathe, her voice trembling as she whispered that her strength was gone. She told him that if the council captured her now, they would break her apart and rebuild her as nothing more than a weapon again. She begged him to end her life before that could happen. Tears blurred Daniel's vision as he held her closer, refusing to accept her words. He told her that he had not fought beside her just to lose her at the end. The leader staggered to his feet in the distance, his armor cracked, his spear broken, but his fury still burning. He shouted across the ruins that Ceres could not escape her fate, that no human could protect her against the will of the council. Daniel rose slowly, lifting Ceres in his arms, his body shaking with exhaustion, but his resolve unbroken. He met the leader's gaze and declared that humanity did not bow to threats or to chains. With Ceres resting against him, he turned his back and walked away, leaving the leader roaring in anger as his forces retreated broken and defeated. They made their way through the ruins step by step, until the sound of engines faded and the night grew quiet once more. Daniel found shelter in the hollow of a collapsed structure and laid Ceres down gently on the ground. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with sorrow and hope. She whispered that he should not waste his life protecting something that was never meant to exist. Daniel shook his head, telling her that she was wrong, that existence itself was proof of worth. He reminded her of every moment she had chosen to save instead of destroy, every laugh they had shared, every time she had stood in front of him to shield him from death. He told her that was humanity, not blood, not DNA, but choice. For a long time she stared at him as if trying to decide whether to believe him. Then slowly a smile touched her strange luminous face. She whispered that perhaps he was right. Perhaps she had been given life not as a prison but as a chance to become more than what she was designed to be. Her hand reached weakly for his and he took it without hesitation, holding on as though his grip could anchor her to this world. The night passed with the stars shining down through the broken ceiling above. Daniel did not sleep. He kept watch over her just as she had kept watch over him so many times before. At dawn, the first rays of light touched her skin, and for a moment her patterns glowed bright again like the birth of a new star. She sat up slowly, her strength not fully returned, but her will unbroken. Together they stood and looked across the horizon where the smoke of battle still rose. The war was not over. The council would not forget, yet in that moment they had each other, and that was enough. Daniel knew the road ahead would be filled with danger, but he also knew he would not walk it alone. Ceres beside him was no longer just an armored stranger or a weapon of the council. She was his ally, his companion, and perhaps something more. She had shown him that beauty was not the mask worn on the outside, but the courage to choose one's own path, even when the galaxy demanded obedience. As they walked into the rising sun, Daniel felt a strange peace settle in his heart. The galaxy would one day remember the soldier who refused to abandon the alien hybrid created as a weapon. They would remember that when all seemed lost, humanity chose compassion as well as strength. And they would remember that beneath the armor of lies there was something real, something beautiful, and something worth protecting. The sun rose over the broken city, painting the ruins in shades of gold and fire. Smoke from the battle still hung in the air, but the silence felt different now, no longer filled with the echo of marching hunters or the roar of war machines. Daniel stood on a high ridge, his rifle slung across his back and Ceres at his side, her strange glowing patterns faint in the morning light yet still alive. They looked out across the horizon where the world stretched endless and uncertain. Ceres spoke quietly, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. She told him that her path had never belonged to her, that she had been born in chains built in shadows, and set free only by her own rebellion. She admitted she had never believed she could escape the grip of the council. Yet standing there beside him, she felt something she had never known before. She felt free. Daniel turned to her, his face worn and scarred from battles, but his eyes steady. He told her that freedom was never given, it was taken by those willing to fight for it. He reminded her that she had chosen to protect him, to walk with him, to defy the orders written into her blood. That choice was more human than anything the council had ever understood. She listened, and though sorrow lingered in her gaze, he saw hope kindling like a flame. The two of them began to walk away from the ruins, moving toward the distant mountains. Each step was heavy but filled with meaning. Daniel knew the council would not stop hunting them. He knew the galaxy would call Ceres a threat and call him a traitor, but he also knew none of it mattered. Together they would face whatever came. Together they were stronger than fear. Ceres reached for his hand, her strange luminous fingers trembling but warm. Daniel did not hesitate. He held her hand firmly, his grip unyielding. She looked at him then, and her smile, though faint, was real. For the first time since he had met her beneath the armor she was not hiding, and he realized her true beauty had never been the mask she wore, but the soul that longed to be more than a weapon. The wind swept across the battlefield, carrying away the ashes of what had been. Behind them lay ruin and fire, but before them lay endless sky. Daniel and Saris did not know what future awaited them, but they knew they would walk into it side by side. In a galaxy filled with cruelty and war, they had found something rare: trust, hope, and the strength to choose their own path. The horizon stretched wide open before them, and as they disappeared into the light of a new day, the galaxy itself seemed to pause as if watching their first steps toward destiny, the end.